Welcome to the Smack Happy Design Videocast, where we explore all things web and marketing. With your hosts, Nicole and Danielle.
So the last Videocast was about, now I'm all tripped up. It was our first one, so, we were kind of introducing, what we were doing, why we were doing it. And we had our guest, Alexis Keenan from Alexis Keenan Video in San Francisco. She was talking about some video best practices. We were talking about a little bit about video today and the future, what we can expect out of it with search. It was a good first podcast or videocast. I don't know which one to say. Videocast, I think, is probably the best one. But it was a good time. So definitely recommend listening to the first one. It definitely gives you a well-rounded idea of why we're doing this. And I think that's important to listen to, at least the first one, and then, pick and choose whichever one interests you moving forward. But that's about that.
All right, thanks for the overview.
Mm-hmm.
So Danielle put our agenda together for today, and he also wanted to start with a fun question, which is, looking to the future, do you have any fears about websites and web design? Did you have any thoughts on that, Marianne? Did you want to start us off? And then I'll share my fears. And then Danielle.
The first thing that comes to mind is just like the whole internet full of Wix and Weebly sites.
Yep, that's my fear too.
Half finished, undesigned, ineffective things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think automation is definitely, it's kind of automation, self-serve. It's definitely kind of scary, but the thing is, someone said this to me recently, like you just can't replace like innovation and the kind of experience that comes with doing this for as long as we've all been doing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And knowing the things that work and the things that don't work. So in a way, I feel like we'll always have a job because we've got the knowledge and experience that comes with this. And if you're using one of those self-serve websites, it's probably great for like that single individual who's just starting out and wants to get something going, right? But eventually you're going to have to invest if you really want your website to perform for you.
Yeah, I agree. And I do think they have their place. Like, it's nice that people who really have no money or just want to try themselves can actually get something up there.
Yeah, test the idea, see if it has any legs.
Yeah.
I think I probably was going to say something super similar. Yeah. While I am a big, I guess I think I like automation. I see a lot of good and a lot of future automation of things. But when it takes a human element out of something that really needs like a human touch to it, it needs a thought process of a strategy. It needs to be customized to each person, each business, and so many like different solutions that are going to go into it have to have a human thought process put to it. That's where it gets scary for me, is that I see a lot of articles now coming out from Wix or coming out from Squarespace or something like, very geared toward businesses. And what was the one that that was very specific? It was something that we came across back, I don't know, a few months ago, talking to a potential client about, it was like an ESPN sports sort of platform.
Oh yeah.
Geared towards teams and having like team announcements and gathering schedules and things like that. So where there was like a lot of customization there still wasn't room for a lot of design or, development customization. It all came very like standard with a lot of things you probably didn't need. Mm-hmm. A lot of those sites run super slow. Even though they give you the SEO tools, you can't really implement what you really want to do on a strategy level. So like there's just limitations to this automation of Wix and Squarespace and these like cookie cutter sort of things. And that's the thing that scares me the most, is that it's going to cut out the most important part of your business, is like, you know, trying to make your goals work gets farther away from me, like when you do stuff like that. So I don't know.
Also, like along those lines a little bit, you know, if you talk to any business coach, if you get any kind of coaching whatsoever, one of the first things they have you do is define your unique selling proposition, right? And when you use sites like that are cookie cutter, or templates that are cookie cutter, and everything is all the same, it's really hard to be unique and stand out, right? So, you know, it's probably not like the most important thing, but it definitely, I think, is among the reasons not to use those types of things. You're just not going to stand apart from your competition if they're all using the same thing.
Yeah. Think of it like how, you know, our website is set up. We like to tell people that we care. You know, we do. You know, we care about what we do. We care about our work. So if our website was set up on a Wix website that loaded really slowly, that didn't really have a lot of great like customization techniques and things like that, what kind of example does that say for us? Like, well, if we really, really care, I don't know if that's a bad thing to say, but for us it would be, you know, for us it would be bad for, you know, that's why it's saying like it's different for every person. If it's an individual, you know, maybe like you said, they don't have the money to put into it, which is fine. You're just starting out. Maybe you're learning or you want to learn. Which I would still probably suggest learning first with WordPress, because if I would have done that first before I went to other, because I mean, I learned from those tools and I had to relearn everything, you know, because it's not really design. It's not really learning to code or anything like that. So you can familiarize yourself with things, but you're not really learning. I don't know. Just to throw that out there.
Yeah. All right, should we dive into our list of top 10 newbie mistakes? Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
Resounding yes.
Sure.
All right, number 1 on the list, using extremely large photos. Why is that bad?
Takes a really long time to load.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I read a statistic, like if the page isn't loading, and you just have a couple of seconds before a person's hitting the back button, right?
Yeah. It's also like, I think it's also something that's important in it. I think most businesses care about their SEO at this point, you know, at its basic form. You know, you don't want to have a slow loading website, because then there's all these things. There's a bad user experience. People don't stay on long enough for them to even appreciate all the time that you put into the content on the site. You know, Google sees that as something that should be taken care of, I guess. It should be quick. Based on the statistic. You know, people want to see things quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, I found that per the statistic I was talking about. 39% of people will stop engaging with the website if images won't load or take too long to load. So if your images don't load quickly enough, then they're just going to leave.
Yeah.
And there are a couple of tools out there you can use to optimize your images. One of them is optimizilla.com. And so that one's, you know, available to everybody. You don't have to be using WordPress or anything. So that's a good resource. Next on the list, not making the site mobile friendly or responsive. Why does that matter?
Well, I think there's 2 main reasons. One's the user experience. Like often people are going to look at your site on the phone, and if it's not been designed for a small screen, then it's not going to look as good. They're not going to be able to see some of the content. They're going to have a bit of a tricky time to even get to the content. And then the second reason is the search engines. Actually, Danielle can probably speak to it a bit better than me, but they actually take that into account when they're making the page listings.
Yeah, both are very right on the money. And probably another thing that people hear all the time is like a broken record, mobile first. You know, so many more people are on their phone, making decisions on their phone. You know, voice search has everything to do with it. So you're not going to actually be, you know, on your desktop talking to your desktop most of the time, probably. Maybe in some cases you would be, but there's a lot of people who, you know, use the voice function or the voice search to search for something. And now it's like getting more popular too with like I just started using my Google capabilities like on my Android phone just to while I'm driving, like, okay, Google, text message so-and-so, you know, so it's, or search for this for me. And, you know, with the Alexa and Google Home, I mean, everything is just, it all comes to fruition. And, you know, mobile is definitely priority for many reasons.
Yeah, I've got another statistic for you guys. Mobile devices now account for nearly 2 out of every 3 minutes spent online.
Wow.
Thirds
I
of
didn't
the
know
time.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty crazy. And I know if I'm looking, you know, searching for something and I come to a website and it just looks like the desktop version and it's like all tiny, I'm like, I'm hitting the back button. I'm not even going to bother trying to work with this, right?
Yep.
So.
Because I just assume it's a really old website, actually.
Yeah, that too.
Not been updated, not professional, maybe the information's out of date. So
yeah, that alone could be its own like videocast topic, like reasons to make sure your website is current.
For sure.
And especially I think for us in the industry, like we're probably more snobby about websites than most people. And like if it doesn't look good, I think they're not professional enough or whatever. I'm out of there, right?
Well, I'll give you a good example though, of somebody who might not be as snobby as we are, who has similar judgments. And it's my husband, but I might like influence that a little bit. So, but he often shops on a lot of car part websites. So, you know, he likes to build engines and he has like car hobbies and things like that, or his friends will just be talking about it and I'll just quickly go to a site. All of these sites are so horrible. And a lot of them don't even load enough for him to say, and they're like, I mean, we're talking about thousands of dollars for one part, you know, or it could be a 25-cent part, but either way, you don't want to be missing out on hundreds, thousands of opportunities of people who just are just impatient and don't want to wait for the website to load to buy that part. Or sometimes they're kind of pigeonholed into it because there's specific things that only certain companies sell. But still, it's like the user experience on those sites are just amazing. And none of them are like mobile friendly at all. So it's like, if you can imagine, like, you know, if you hold your phone, what is this? Not landscape, it's vertical. So
portrait.
Right? Yeah. Portrait. Yeah, that's what it's called. So if you hold it this way, right, you're like still doing, you know, trying to move around and like see and then like zoom in to like the little teeny product images. And, you know, the PayPal thing doesn't work with the app and it's, you know, a whole thing. So there are people out there who do get snobby and are like, what the heck is going on here? So we're not the only ones.
Yeah. How many customers are you losing by having an outdated website? It's a great question. So next on the list, not aligning to a grid. So this is an interesting one. What do you have to say about that one?
Yeah, I mean, that applies to like design of anything.
Right.
It's the fundamental graphic design rule, I think. Align things. And using a grid, it gets interesting because if you see a really well-designed site, you're not necessarily going to notice the grid straight away if you're not a graphic designer, but you will notice if it's not on the grid. Like you kind of, there's just this messiness and, you know, just it feels off. And I think humans are kind of hardwired somehow to enjoy alignment and symmetry. Not always symmetry, but, you know, certain visual cues that are like unconscious.
Yeah, well put.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. That does go with anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking of like when you're talking about the visual cues and like how things are laid out too, it sort of reminded me of how you're supposed to do presentations. Just, you know, it's not about websites necessarily, but the design of a presentation. So like the flow of like how things go and how things look next to each other. And you don't want to have too much text. You don't want to have too many photos. So it's, you know, you want them to be in this grid box, you know, this place that is perfectly laid out for your eyes. So yeah, that makes sense.
It makes me think of a Radiohead song, Everything in Its Right Place. I've always got songs popping into my head based on things that people said.
Thank you for putting that in my head for the rest of the day, because that would be...
It's not a bad song.
No, it's not. But it was like the other day I had I think it was one of our clients you mentioned they had attended a Depeche Mode show. And I was like on a Depeche Mode kick, like always, just all day, every day was Depeche Mode. So that'll be this. Radiohead will be this week.
Yeah, cool. So kind of along those lines of music, there's also this thing that happens with music where you have a certain set of notes in a row and everybody will always land on that next note because there's just some natural thing that happens or that we want to happen in our brain. So it just kind of flows and everybody enjoys it. And so I feel like it's kind of the same thing with the grid, you know, like you're saying, you know, just naturally we want to see things all lined up. And, you know, there are situations where you have asymmetry, like in art or, you know, depending on your composition, but there's definitely something to that, having the grid.
I think also it really forces you to leave white space. You know, you can't forget that you've got the columns and the gutters laid out, so you can't forget that you need that.
Yeah, and white space can be really powerful and important too. You know, if things are too crowded together, then it's just hard to look at and hard to take in.
Sometimes I think of it like a conversation. If there's too many people or too many things like talking at the same time, there's not really a way for you to kind of calm down and be able to like listen to what's really important. So it's like that to me is what white space is really. I mean, you know, you don't want to be you know, inundated with so many things at the same time, and it's, you know, I guess it goes along with the grid and everything. So
yeah, that's interesting. It's the spaces in between the things we're saying.
Everything is about communication for me. It's always been that way, and you can relate communication to everything. So design is definitely a big communicator or a non-communicator. I guess if you're really bad or not good, I don't know what would be the white and black of that situation, but anywho.
All right, next up, leaving things unfinished or broken. So where did this one come from?
Well, for me, I guess it would be now I don't know the specifics of these things, but I can report on these things. So I can go to a Marianne and be like, hey, I'm seeing this, you know, when we're doing browser testing or when we're looking at a website checkup and we're looking at things, and maybe, I don't know, there's something that comes up in DevTools that's like, this isn't really loading, or something isn't quite right. And you know, there's something that pops up often now too with mobile. While the website might be mobile friendly, there's like CSS files or something that just aren't loading properly. They're not being found or something like that. Like maybe a folder changed, you know. So those are the kind of things that I'm thinking of, but I'm sure there's more to leaving things unfinished or broken. And I think both of you could probably speak to those things too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Coming soon pages. Don't do it. Just don't do it. Don't include it. If you know you're going to have it, then make a note to yourself, but don't put a coming soon page there. Like if a person clicks on it, they're expecting to see something there. And I'm sure there's like a certain amount of disappointment that happens when they don't find that information. So just don't put it out there. Marianne also mentioned when we were talking about our fears, you said something about like, all these websites out there that are just kind of sitting there and like some of them are unfinished, right? So there's that too.
Yeah, it just has this sense of this project's been abandoned somehow, right? Like it doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think as a developer also, like it's a bit like the coming soon page. If something's not finished and not ready, like take the code out and then keep it and note to self, add this in later. But yeah, like don't have like unfinished, unused functionality written in there on the website.
Or untested.
Yeah.
Like you've got to test your stuff. And not just in the different browsers to make sure that it looks good everywhere, but if you do have something that has some complex functionality, try entering the wrong things, try using it the way your mom would use it, assuming your mom is older than like 50. You guys are young, your moms might be younger, but it's hard to do that, to step out of it because we're so wrapped into our industry and what we do. But just try to bang away at it and break it, see what happens, so that you're accounting for it. So next on the list, slow server times. So this kind of goes back to having large photos and making sure that your site loads quickly. But any thoughts on why else that might be bad or what we could do about it?
I think probably an IT person could talk a lot about this, but the one experience that comes to mind is there was a client that I had that had their website hosted, a couple of people that I knew, probably more than one person. They hosted it in someone's, like some dude's basement that probably had a PC or something, like a server PC. I just hit my printer, guys. And it's not the best like option. There's no support. There's no understanding of like what you're getting out of it. You can only upload and download certain things. And when you're redoing your website and you're constantly like updating it, then you get those things where they're like, oh, you can't move forward with this because you used up your bandwidth and things like that. So I don't know, just thinking of things like that too, where you want to go with someone who is going to have good servers. They're going to have a good hosting service. You're going to get the support that you need. If you have questions or if you want to upgrade your service, there's all these options. There's someone to talk to.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised how often that happens.
Yeah.
That
it's weird.
Now, like hosting on a friend's server in their basement, like why would you do, like it's free, okay, but hosting doesn't cost that much,
No,
it's
probably one of the least expensive things about websites.
Yeah, and if your website goes down in the middle of the night, you're gonna call your friend and wake them up and say, hey, go reboot your server? Like it's just not gonna happen.
Yeah.
So all right, Marianne, did you have something to add? Because I was going to talk a little bit about the different hosts.
I don't have anything to add, I don't think.
Okay, so there's lots of hosting providers that have been around for a long time. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus. If you want to know who they are, then send me a note and I'll talk to you about it. But, they have a lot of shared packages, so you're on servers with other people. And most of these kind of older school hosting providers, they have pretty slow servers, and they'll have a lot of like up and down time. We monitor the uptime of like most of our clients, and we get little notifications in Slack whenever a site goes down. And I can tell you that most of those old hosts, like, you'll have the site is up, the site is down, the site is up, the site is down, the site is up, like every 5 minutes on like any given day. And I will mention our host of choice, which is WP Engine. Like, we hardly ever get a notification about those sites being down, like super, super rare. So, you know, whoever you choose to host your site definitely has an effect. It can slow down your website, or it can also, you know, you can have some downtime. So choose wisely and carefully, and don't be afraid to invest in this, because if your site's down and you lose a customer because of that, like, how much is that worth to you, right? Probably worth more than the couple $100 you'll spend in a year to keep the site on a good host.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and one thing I thought of while you were talking about the different servers, my knowledge that goes into this only goes so far, but I know there's a difference in between choosing an Nginx server, and I don't even know if I'm saying this right, or an Apache-based server, because of SEO types of things you can do. So if you trust in the person who's managing these updates, so if you were going to say, okay, I need to have a robots, document, a text document that says, here's my website, search it, it's open for you to look at, sort of thing, which I think is a pretty good SEO practice at this point to have. I think most people would recommend that. Sometimes there was somebody that I worked with in the past who had an Nginx-based server where they didn't add these files because you have to add them differently. So I guess like when you do have them, maybe the Yoast plugin like on WordPress doesn't really get with it. So you need to have someone that's more like, educated, like our Ruben that we have on our team. He would know, I think, the ins and outs of those little things. But there's really deep technical stuff that goes to it too. So if there's somebody that has a lot of knowledge about like choosing the kind of host that might have certain types of servers that might benefit your SEO and just this little bit much more, you could think about it in that way too.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure someone who knows a lot more than me about it is going to rip me a new one for that information. But I know that there's something to that
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot more to think about when it comes to choosing a server. That's basically the gist of the point of that.
Yeah. That's probably another one that we could have a whole episode about.
Yeah.
So whoever rips you a new one, we can invite them on as a guest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. I think I should just ask people, I'll be watch this episode and how would you explain this, or rip me a new one? And then we can just have a few guests on and do like a server roast. No, I probably can't do that. Don't want to mention any. They'd be the people that want to mention names and drop names.
Mm-hmm.
For the bad things, for the no-nos.
All right, next up. Failing to recognize and follow basic website best practices. So what do we have to say about this one?
Marianne, did you want to go?
Yeah, there's so many different sides to this, like the coding, the design, the user experience, search engines, the hosting. So I feel like the thing I think about most is the code. And the reason that it's really important to follow best practice is it's about speed and efficiency of how well the website works, basically, and also how easy it is to continue to update in the future. Mm-hmm. So you've got bad, messy code. It's going to be more difficult to change the background color next month, which should be a tiny, simple change. Like I've worked on websites where the code has got so messed and kind of like crunched together that it's almost easier to restart the entire website than it is to just change a few stylistic things, which is not the way it should be. Like,
yep, I've come across a few of those too.
Yeah, it blows my mind. I just, sort of like, I hate to tell you, but we're going to start again.
Yes, I'm not working with this mess.
Yeah, I can't handle this mess.
It reminds me of themes and how we always talk about, buying themes, and while they might look nice, they might not actually be nice for your website.
Yeah.
Code-wise, SEO-wise, speed-wise. I mean, all of it comes together, and we do have that video that we could share too, with a lot of the key high-level reasons, the best practices for the website. Talking about above the fold, what do you want in the middle, what do you want in the footer, how to kind of lay it out. So there's those two.
Yeah. So that one's more for like a usability perspective, right? Like when a person is using your website, you want to make sure that all of those bases are covered. Because when you started out, Marianne, I'm thinking, there's a lot to think about. Like there's like at every level, there's definitely some things to think about, which is why making websites are so complicated.
Yeah.
And that like each of us, like, you're worried about code, I'm worried about the user, Danielle's worried about SEO. So, this is one reason why having a team of people doing this stuff is awesome.
Yeah, I think it's impossible for one person to think about all those things, actually.
Yeah.
Give them all the thought and the care that they need.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. So we'll share a link to that from the user perspective. It's just so much to think about.
This is a lot. This is like a loaded 10 newbie mistakes.
Yeah, like we could
so
probably
much more than just these 10 things that we've talked about in the last 45 minutes or so.
Yeah, we could have episodes on all of these things.
Oh gosh, every single one of them.
Yeah. So has it really been 45 minutes? We should probably try to get through the next couple quickly.
I don't know. I think we were kind of chit-chatting before it started, but
so next up, forgetting to add social media.
So I think for this one at its basic form is brand recognition. You should have social media at this point. If you don't, just do it. It's the way the world's going. I know a lot of people have been, a little reluctant to start social media, like for one reason or another. But, if you have the opportunity to do it and you don't want to put your face to something, do your brand. There's a whole other topic we could do on this. I think there's SEO benefits to it. Bringing people back to your site, engagement with your stuff. There's some technical side to that too. I think on the basic level, that's what I think that means.
And I think also, some people just aren't sure what to do with their social media or how to find the time to do it. I'm currently writing a blog post about finding the time to do this kind of stuff. So keep your eyes peeled for that. But we should definitely do an episode on that. I'm sure that would be really helpful to some people. Talking about which social media you should use that's appropriate for what you do, what you should be posting, how often you should be posting, all of that stuff. But
I would even say if some people have the budget, put as much into social media as you do your website. It's one of those things that just really goes hand in hand together and works better for what you want to do and your goals. That's several more ways you can get your word out there as opposed to not having anything to do it.
Yeah.
I think it's another thing that's really, you can often tell the difference between someone who's had a professional do their social media work and someone who's just kind of DIY.
Mm-hmm.
Not that you always have to pay a professional, but it could be a good area to, like Danielle said, throw some more money in that corner. Like,
yeah,
you know, you just have someone who knows what they're doing handle it, and someone who loves it too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It does show.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
All right, next up, lack of call to action. What is a call to action?
Well, I guess typically it's some kind of button or a link or a thing that the user has to do, or a thing that the user is inspired to do.
Yeah.
So just passively reading the information on your website.
Right. It's the step you want them to take to move forward, and interact with you, or hire you.
Mm-hmm. Add to cart.
Yeah. Your site shouldn't. It's not a piece of paper, right? It's not just reading material. You're making it for a reason, and that reason is you to interact with people, help them, hopefully help them, that kind of thing. Make sure you have a call to action, and make sure it's above the fold. The fold is where if you're on your laptop and you see the screen, that bottom part is the fold. It comes from newspapers, where the newspaper would come folded, right? So above the fold is that first piece that everybody sees.
What's a newspaper?
Danielle, it's the paper format of a news website that you might see.
I'm just kidding. I'm not that little.
But, you know,
I've seen newspapers
10 or 20 years from now when people are watching this video.
Newspapers.
Sorry, what?
I said, for those of us who might not know, or have ever had the annoying like paper guy just throw random papers that you don't read on your porch. People still have those, I think.
Next up, analytics is missing.
Track your data. Just have someone that knows how to put the Google Analytics code on the website so everything is tracking. Maybe you don't know how to read or interpret the analytics yet, but somebody someday will. And they can look back and they can look at what's been happening and you know, further set things up, but just make sure it's there. And I think everybody to this point, at some point, has it somewhere on the website. Might not be the correct place, might not be tracking right, but I think everybody to this point knows that like Google is the end all be all thing. So
and it's free.
Yeah, and it's free. You know, I mean, if you do want to pay for it, they have paid options now, but just make sure everything's tracking in some way, shape, or form, or there's no way that you can tell what people are doing with your website, and that's so important.
Okay, number 10, does not design with SEO in mind. So what does that mean?
Let's use an example. There was a really popular website that I go to a lot for WordPress references, and I have frequently found pictures that are named like image 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, X, Q, Y, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, dot, whatever. And that's like a horrible SEO practice. And coming from someone who's supposed to be like a super reliable resource, like you want to name your images what they are, you know? And images are searchable, you know, I mean, images were once the new video for search, and they're still relevant. You know, people's images still show up. Just think of it like, you know, someone who does photography, or someone who has like a very visual business where they have like examples of their work, like an electrical company that has done all these jobs, you know, on these crazy commercial buildings. And, you know, those named photos could show up. in search. But that's just one example. But everything that you do has to keep SEO in mind. So like, we've talked this whole time, every single one of these steps has something to do, can be tied to SEO. Every single one of these things is looked at. So, optimizing your photos, don't make huge photos, page speed, you want to have a quick loading site. The user experience has to do with SEO because of the statistics that you shared at its basic form, So really, I think number 10 is sort of like a culmination of like, you should be doing all these things and, also keep in mind that all of these things have to do with SEO too.
Mm-hmm.
While they might be more technical on some of the things.
Mm-hmm. I almost want to say it's, I want to use cooking as an example. Like if you're making some chicken, there's like so many ways to cook your chicken. You could boil it and have some really uninteresting, bland chicken to eat, right? Or you could roast it. And you could put all of these, you could put in some like apples and onions inside of it, and like you can baste it and you can add all of these flavors to it. And I think that's what you really want in your website. You want to do all of these extra things that are going to add to it and make it like so much better on so many levels, right? Is that a good analogy? Does that work?
Well, that's a good analogy, but I want to blow your analogy up. Or you could not eat chicken at all.
Mm-hmm. Oh, right. I forgot that you don't.
Because you want to love chickens and hug them.
Yes.
Instead of cook them with apples and spices.
Right.
You want to feed them apples.
We'll have to come up with a vegetarian analogy for this.
Like vegetarian or vegan, I guess, right?
Vegan.
Or a fruitarian.
Fruitarian.
I've read that there's actually fruitarians.
Wow.
You have to eat a lot of bananas. But yeah, number 10 definitely I think is sort of even a summary of all the things that we talked about, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But that is a good example. I get what you mean. So do we want to mention how all of these things people have done before? A lot of our clients have done these things before, have made these mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens?
They're kind of coming to us to fix these mistakes.
So it's like, while we all are saying, yeah, people want to learn, they want to do these things, they want to save budget or they don't have budget. But there's certain things that even at the very least, you should try to go to a professional, even just to have them do certain pieces of it or kind of provide you with guidance or like a strategy behind it or something, to try and guide you to not digging yourself into 10 mistake hole or more. And by this time, you've invested a lot of time, invested a lot of money. I mean, time is money too. So, and for a lot of, think of a startup, like you don't have a ton of time to be doing all of these things and then realize months later that none of it really worked out the way you thought it would. And then you have to go hire a professional to do all of these things again. So, lesson learned. But
are you saying just start with a professional to begin with?
Yes. In some way, shape, or form. Like I was saying, like maybe you don't have, you don't want to do an entire redesign at the moment, but perhaps there's certain things that you can call and even just start a conversation.
Yeah, well, I like how you said, even to get the advice, right? Like, talk to us and we can give you the guidelines to make sure that you're doing it right to begin with. That's an excellent point.
Yeah. Communication.
Yes.
That's the key to everything.
It is, isn't it?
Yes. It can be related to everything, I swear. Just when you're thinking about things in the shower, think about that. Because the shower is the place where you think about stuff. That's why I said that. That's where I think about stuff anyway. The best ideas come in the shower or doing something totally unrelated. Yeah, driving.
Yeah,
I guess when you're relaxing, you're able to really focus.
Kind of go into the flow state.
Yeah.
So the last question you had on here before we wrap up is, what's one of the biggest mistakes you've ever made with website design? I could go first if you want.
Go ahead.
So, I've had Smack Happy for 9 years, and I think there were maybe 2 or 3 times where I made the same dumb mistake, which was creating a website in WordPress. And there's this little box you can check to tell it not to have the search engines find the website. And it's great to have that box checked while you are developing the website, right? Because you don't want people landing on your half-baked work, as we had discussed earlier. So the mistake is remembering to uncheck that box when we launch the website.
Right.
And it's huge because, like, I had a client come to me and she's like, yeah, I searched for my website in Google and it's not turning up. I'm like, oh. And then I investigate and then I see that darn box. So I learned that one early on several times, unfortunately.
Yeah, that one's a good one. I think probably my biggest mistake is, and I mean, this could be for any site, but I never realized how easy it was. How do I want to put this? So there was a site that wasn't on WordPress. Well, no, it was on WordPress, but it wasn't set up with like a hosting service like WP Engine. So like creating a staging site wasn't super easy to do to me because I didn't have the knowledge to just do it. So I remember trying to teach myself how to create a staging site in some way, shape, or form. And I like doubled the database and like hid a database inside of another database. And I when you deleted something, it like deleted the whole website. And it was just this ridiculous. Granted, it was the staging site, right? But still, I just couldn't figure out how to make it work. But to people that don't have that knowledge, you can always find some easier solution to that, or have somebody just do it for you, which I should have probably done. Because while I'm really good at a lot of things, I'm not the best at doing the development, right? So we leave that to you, both professionals. And the other people on our team, I have this understanding of these things, but trying to do everything was probably the bigger mistake of the two. So, letting the professionals do it again was probably the mistake.
That's great advice. Knowing what you don't know, right? And then asking for help.
You can't know it all.
Yeah.
You can't do it all. You can't know it all. That's for sure.
So
all right.
true.
What's yours, Marianne?
Mine is, I'm thinking of like one of the first portfolios I made for myself. Probably a couple of them actually at the beginning. And the thing that I did wrong was making them way, way, way too complex. So, and it was a great learning experience, so it's probably a good thing. But in terms of selling myself, it did not work. I actually had feedback from people saying like, I'm just so confused when I go on your website. Like, I just want to see a couple of examples of your work. And there's this like interactive thing, this moves, and also including too many examples of work. And I think that goes for any content, like less is more.
Yes.
So yeah, that's kind of the lesson that I learned, was like, really think before you start. Like, maybe make a list of like 3 things that I actually want the end user to read, understand, see. Because they're not going to see like a million things, and they're not going to spend an hour playing with your website just because it's cool. So yeah. Yeah,
that's another good one. Keep it simple, straightforward. Awesome. So I guess we'll go ahead and wrap up. Thank you for joining us, Marianne.
My pleasure.
In case it wasn't clear, Marianne is part of our team here. and hopefully you'll join us again for a couple more video casts.
Yeah.
And then next up, what are we talking about next?
Oh, the harsh reality about running a business. And we're hoping to have a very special guest for that one.
Yes.
Who's going to have some really awesome things to say about that.
Yes.
Looking forward to hearing from her.
Should we say who she is? I mean,
I don't know.
People
Has she accepted our invitation? Should we leave it a mystery?
I think we should leave it a mystery.
I think it should be a mystery.
All right.
Because I think she's a good surprise. So we'll surprise everybody.
All right. I like it. Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Stay tuned. Visit our website for more goodies and resources. And we will virtually see you next time.
Yeah.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Smack Happy Design Videocast. For more information and downloads, visit smackhappy.com/videocast, where you'll find more episodes and the opportunity to subscribe on YouTube or iTunes. You can also sign up for our newsletter delivered to your inbox monthly. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and colleagues. Again, that's smackhappy.com/videocast. See you next time.